Heyo, EC here, and do you know what really grinds my gears is the Steam Deck versus Nintendo Switch 2 comparison so many people keep making. Now, why does this annoy me? It's quite simple, really. People seem to act like these systems serve the same purpose when they do not. The Steam Deck is a handheld PC meant to play your Steam library on the go. It is not designed to compete with a system like the Nintendo Switch 2, which is designed to be a console and handheld hybrid. Switch 2, you can plug into a TV and play, obviously, Nintendo games and, obviously, the library of games that are developed for that system specifically. The Steam Deck is not that. The Steam Deck can play PC games. It can play a lot of PC games from different stores as well, but you have to sideload them. It's also great for emulation with using stuff like EmuDeck. However, if you're spending, $500 to buy the high-tier Steam Deck with, obviously, the terabyte of storage and whatnot, if you're spending that to emulate like NES games, you kind of need to refactor in your life. Now, with the comparison, I get people think, they're both handhelds, therefore they're competing for the same market, considering they do share some games in their libraries. Stuff like Cyberpunk 2077, for example, is on both systems. However, we also need to factor in that the Steam Deck is designed to play thousands of games from, obviously, Steam. Well, the Nintendo Switch 2 is more aimed at the console audience, as obviously it's also plugs into a TV, and it's obviously got a more limited game library, largely because it's a console, and the console obviously only is backwards compatible with the Switch 1 and Switch 2, as well as having obviously their retro game subscription service within Switch Online. Now, the Steam Deck, people argue, has a bigger library. That is very much true. But then you've also got to factor in that of the millions of games on Steam, thanks to obviously Steam launching in 2004, 21 years ago, not all the games will run perfectly well on Steam. And there has been cases where some online games have actually got people banned for using a Steam Deck. It's quite a weird situation there. And to just compare the two systems because they're both handhelds, it's not really a fair comparison. Now, I'm not sure which one's more powerful, but I do know from what I've seen, the Switch 2 is treated more like as a handheld in this argument than it is a console, which is also another factor it can do. Whilst the Steam Deck is treated as like this all-powerful system when, come on. It can't play half the games on Steam because half the games require certain key functionalities that the Steam Deck can't even do. So I don't really see how this comparison even makes any sense, because when you actually break it down to what they are, the Steam Deck is a handheld PC, the Switch 2 is a hybrid home console and a handheld hybrid. They both do the handheld thing. That is quite simple, but they are nowhere near the same system technologically, nor are they the same when it comes to games and whatnot, because, Steam Deck, sure, it's had longer to get a bigger library, but obviously a lot of these games on Steam were developed as PC-focused games and don't have like control support and stuff, so that's kind of hard for those games to actually run on Steam Deck. But the Switch 2 is developed as a console as well as a handheld, so all the games that are developed for the Switch 2 are designed to play with the Switch controllers and the Switch Joy-Cons and whatnot. That's just a big comparison people are missing out, and it's kind of annoying that people aren't looking at this more logically and looking at the fact that these systems are aimed at different audiences as well. Because if you don't have a large PC library, you ain't going to buy a Steam Deck. And if you are not a fan of Nintendo games, you ain't going to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. That is just quite simply it. These systems have such different target audiences. It's different than if you compare, say, Xbox and PlayStation, which have basically the same demographic and the same overlap in audience. That's just my take. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. I know this video is kind of weird and off the cuff, but I think people need to really understand this comparison. It's just people trying to stir up dramas and trying to have arguments, and it's really quite sad when you actually look at these systems. They're not the same thing. It's very clear they're not the same. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. I've been EC, and I'm signing out. Peace.